Are there advantages to aging? Yes, I am Debbi-Jo Horton, and welcome to Advantages to Aging. Join my guests and I as we discuss aging and what makes for a healthy lifestyle, which results in a quality life. Thank you for joining me today. Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Advantages to Aging. I'm your host, DJ Horton, and today I have with me Timothy Sweet of the law offices of Timothy Sweet, and we are going to talk about, what happens when that marriage isn't what we thought it would be. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is probably a conversation that's going to make a few people a little unhappy or a little uncomfortable, but others are going to go like, oh my, he is speaking my language. So let's just dive in, shall we? I
Sure.
know oftentimes, especially women, we're not happy with the relationship. Maybe we're putting up with things and we stick with it because of the kids. Is that always the best thing to do?
Not always. I mean, these kids where I don't think we give them enough credit. They're so incredibly intuitive. There's one judge who likes to tell us when we're in chambers with him. So this was when the judge is now of judge age, but when he was a little boy, his grandma would tell him, or his parents would say, kids can taste it in the grass, which I think was just his Italian grandmother's way of saying kids know. We think as grown-ups we're being clever because we're hiding things from them, but kids, I don't know what it is, if it's energy or aura, but kids know. They know when something is off. They might not be able to conceptualize it or verbalize it, but they know when something is wrong. And so we're more often than not, we think we're protecting them when they're very much in the conversation.
Right. Whether you want them to be in the conversation or not, you are correct. They are there. And, I sometimes think that, is that really sending them the right message? Like,
It depends on
yes,
the dynamic, right?
right.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you sending them the message that sometimes marriages go through rough patches, but we stick it out because that's what commitment is. And as long as we get to the valley on the other side of that hill, there's a
Hmm.
sunnier day coming. Or are you sending the message that sometimes we have to suffer abuse and accept abuse? Or are you sending a message that a relationship with zero affection is perfectly normal and healthy and adequate, and that's what you should expect for yourself? Whether you want to or not, whether you know it or not, you are sending a message to your child or to your children with everything you do, including absolutely your relationship.
Yeah. So true. So true. I actually had a girlfriend who was in a very bad relationship. Her parents were in a very bad relationship. And it wasn't until she was an adult with children of her own did she realize that it's not okay to have a parent wave a gun in front of your face and tell you they love you. She did not know that until she was well into her 40s. So, what happens when, you get to that point where the kids are grown, they're out of the house, and the relationship still hasn't changed? What are some of the options that men and women have to face?
Well, there are the classic ones. You can separate, which is you live separate. You separate your things, your good things, and your bad things, and you go on to live separate lives, but you remain legally married. So if you separate, but you don't divorce, you remain legally married. Can't marry anyone else, carrying around the ball and chain, etc. You can divorce, of course, which so many people do. You can go to counseling. You can try to talk it out and work it out with your spouse. Of course, we become such different people by the time we're empty nesters, right? I always laugh at people who say, cynics who say, oh, people don't change. I say, well, take a person at 7 and take a person at 70, and then tell me that that person hasn't changed. So, of course, you'll change. Your partner will change, as you should, I hope.
Right.
And it's a matter of, are you changing together? Are you changing for the better? Are you changing in a way that your smooth edges can kind of help sandpaper out their rough edges? Or are you just different people? And that is obviously a very personal decision that they'll have to make. I can't tell you, because I know no one tunes into your podcast to get no advice, but I can tell you from a divorce perspective, if you're asking, if you're not sure, then don't file for divorce. Please, if you have to ask, it's like going to a Lexus dealership, right? And they say if you have to ask the price, it's too expensive for you. If you're still struggling, you're not sure, then don't divorce yet. At least try to figure that out. I guess
Yeah.
maybe because every single work day, I'm seeing people who have to deal with the horrors of divorce, losing assets and accumulating debt and legal fees and what it means for all the relationships you've built over years or decades. That the in the family court hallways, the common saying is "stay in your miserable divorce," which is again cynical, but and that excludes anybody who's going through genuine abuse. But long story short, if you're arm wrestling with yourself about it, that's probably not a divorce, at least not yet.
And that's a really good point because so many times I hear of people that got a divorce and then a few years later married the same person because they worked out all their issues. Like, why wouldn't you work them out before you went through the cost of a divorce?
But yeah, for some people, it might be cathartic. Some
Yep.
people, I think, need to send the message that I can and will live without you. I have this existence. I don't, we're not entirely codependent. I am my own
Mm.
thing and I can show that to you. But it's not terribly uncommon. It's not as uncommon as people think. I had a case this morning where the couple divorced rather amicably, got back together, lived together, had another child, and are now separated again. And the legal issues it raises is one thing, but love makes fools of us all sooner or later.
True, true. And, I guess that has something to say with the don't rush into the marriage in the first place.
Mhm. Or it says is at least don't marry because you think it's what your mom or your uncle or your best friend think you should do. There has to be a selfish element to it, I think, for it to be successful.
Yeah, that is a really excellent point. Oftentimes, especially when we're younger and there are public displays of "Will you marry me?" and all these people congratulating the bride to be. Oftentimes, if you're young and you're not that experienced, you could easily be thinking, well, I guess they know best, right? I don't know if this is what love is,
Mhm.
but if everybody is saying that this is my next step, then I guess it is. I'm
That's
hoping
exactly
that
it.
not too many people are doing that anymore these days, but
You
it's,
have it exactly.
that does
It
happen too often.
it shouldn't just be the next natural milestone.
Debbie-Jo with Neora. You know what our brand partners love the most about their Neora business? They can do it from anywhere. Think about it. Haven't you always wanted to have your own schedule, be your own boss, maybe even have a global business and be able to run it from your favorite coffee shop or lounging by the pool or seaside, not having to go into the office? We make sure that all of our brand partners have all of the tools they need to run their business while fitting it into their busy lives. So if that's something that you've been curious about, what it might be like for you to be able to do life on your own terms, then I think we need to chat.
My hope for, and I think from everything I read and understand that the younger generations are changing this. I hope that marriage can become rare, as I think it probably should be rare. I like to read and listen to Jay Shetty, and I'm sure podcast fans would know about Jay Shetty, but he's something along the lines of he says that at the outset of your relationship, it's about chemistry, and if you click and connect, and that's so exciting and so wonderful. But at some point, a long-term committed relationship has to progress from chemistry to character. And maybe you won't have the same character together after a year or after 10 years. And there's nothing wrong with that. I
Yeah.
think we have to make marriage rare, but we also have to make the stigma of divorce. We have to end the stigma with divorce. It can be no matter. We cannot think anymore that if you marry and you try commitment with somebody and it doesn't work out, that you or both of you are a failure. That's ridiculous.
Right. Well, and as you had said, you hope that you're going to be growing and changing into a better person. And sometimes you grow apart. And it's not that either one of you are no longer a good person. You're great people, just not on the same path.
Hmm. And I wish in some way we could take the emotion out of that. I wish sometimes couples could see, like, just like you said, I am wonderful and you are wonderful. For whatever reason, at this point of our life, we are not wonderful together, and we could both flourish separately, which would also be better for the children. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know why we're seeing that. Why, as a society, we continue to see that as a misstep or a step back or like we've tripped up in life. It's
Yes.
just part of the process. Just like maybe your relationship is splitting up, divorcing, and getting back together again. I think getting together is wonderful. Splitting up is wonderful if that's what's best. Getting together again is wonderful. Everything along the process, hopefully, will be wonderful. And we have to stop with these societal opinions of one against the other. Not every marriage is worth celebrating. Not every divorce is worth mourning.
Right. Some divorces are worth celebrating.
Absolutely, some divorces are worth celebrating.
Right. And some marriages are worth mourning. So if there was a piece of advice that you could give our listeners, what would it be?
For those, again, first thing is if you're not sure, it's probably not a divorce. That's armchair bite-sized a sound bite that you can take away. If you are sure it's a divorce and you're going to go down that path, know from the outset what you can live without, what in your current life you can live without. I don't care if you have a super expensive mattress, if it's health insurance, figure out what you need, what you want, and what you absolutely cannot live without. Because if you don't ask yourself that question, the court will certainly ask that question.
Right. And you don't want to be standing there not being able to give an answer.
Right. And of course, that requires an extraordinary amount of honesty with ourselves, which maybe when we're going through something as stressful as divorce, we're too clouded to see that. But if you want to write it down on a piece of paper, here's everything I have now as a married woman, a mom, and here's of everything I have now. Here's where I'm hitting the reset button on my life. I'm going to be single. That me needs these things, wants these things, and cannot live without these things. And you don't have to rationalize it. If you can't live without the espresso maker, God bless you. That's fine. No one is here to judge you, but you have to be honest with yourself. And then please, please be candid with the court or with your attorney, because if people came in to the process knowing what they could and could not live without, you would take months off your case, which will save you so much money, which will save you so much stress that you can use to do anything, because literally anything is better than just hanging out in court and trying to figure it out.
Yeah. So just a little sneak peek into my life. I've been married and divorced twice. Both of them were amicable divorces. We basically, before even going in front of the judge, knew exactly where we were splitting everything. And especially if you have children involved,
Mm.
I beg of you, do not tear down their other parent, because you owe that person your children's lives. Without them, they would not exist. And you don't want to have your children, no matter what age they are, feel like they have to make a choice between their two parents. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to celebrate with them, but both my ex-husbands are welcome in my home at any time. And they often are. So I would hope, listeners, that you found some information helpful. If you've got specific questions, you'll be able to find Timothy's information in the show notes. Feel free to reach out, ask those questions. Now, he is in Rhode Island, so I don't know that he could help you with a divorce in any other state. Are you just Rhode Island?
Just Rhode Island.
Yeah.
I can help a little bit, but yeah, because of licensing, I can only give true legal advice here in Rhode Island.
Right. And, oftentimes people say divorce attorneys are like used car salesmen. They're going to tell you anything and everything to keep the divorce rolling so that they can keep piling on those fees. But I have it on good authority that Timothy Sweet does not do that. He really has the best interest of his clients and their families at heart. And that's how he came to me.
And it's a blessing that I have so much work in so many cases that I don't have to manufacture reasons to keep any open. We're very, very happy here at this office when a case closes, because there's always There's always three more waiting to open on the way in. So, but one before I go, one thing you had mentioned, not disparaging the other parent. And there's a Judge Asquith in the family court here in Rhode Island puts it so brilliantly when she's dealing with items like that. One parent trying to, for lack of a better word, alienate the other against the children. And Judge Asquith says simply, you are not allowed to hate your spouse more than you love your children.
Oh, I like that.
Isn't that wonderful? And when you do that, when you talk badly about them or undermine the other parent or their family or their character, what have you, that's exactly what you're doing. Because of course, just like you said, that your spouse is your child. Your child is you and your spouse. So it's literally impossible to talk down about your spouse without also insulting your child. You cannot do it. And I would personally, thankfully I don't have this power, but we see it so often. I'd love if there was some minor criminal infraction to doing that. I would love if we could all just agree to stop doing that, no matter what the circumstances.
I think we would have a better world if that were the case.
We'd certainly have better children.
For sure. For sure. Well, listeners, this is another episode of Advantages to Aging. I hope that you have found this talk with Timothy Sweet, Esquire, as insightful as I have, and that you can take something away that you can share or marinate on. Until next time.
Do you think one of the biggest advantages to aging is all the knowledge we gain along the way? Me too. What did you learn today? Share with me in my Facebook group with the same name as this podcast, Advantages to Aging. Now hit subscribe so you don't miss all the tips to come in future episodes.